Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. So let's get started and look into the first article. So the first article of discussion is about the Chang'e 4. So what is this? This is basically one of the programs or the missions that has been undertaken by the Chinese. So this is a Chinese lunar exploration project that is named after its goddess, that is the Chang'e. So what is the mission? What is the vision of this particular project? What this will basically do is it will try to understand the far side of the moon. It will explore the far side of the moon in order to understand the astronomical observation, surveying this region of the moon. It will see if there are any mineral deposits in this particular area. It will look into the neutron radiation as well as neutron atoms. So this particular study will explore the entire paradigm of what the far side of the moon is. So the first question that pops up is, what is the far side of the moon? How is it different from the near side of the moon? So the first point that we have to understand is, as we stand on the earth, the one which we are able to see, the one which we are able to visualize, that particular moon is called as the near side of the moon, and that which we are not able to see is called as the far side of the moon or the dark side of the moon. Why is it called as the dark side of the moon? That is because this region which is unexplored, which we have not visualized, has number of things which are unexplored. That is the reason why this is called as the dark side of the moon or the far side of the moon. Now the question is, why is that this happens technically? Let's try and understand. So we know for the fact the earth rotates on its orbit. So as the earth rotates on its orbit, we also have the moon which rotates on its orbit. So this particular rotation of the earth as well as the moon are in sync with each other. So the clock rates are almost similar. They rotate at the same rate. So because they are rotating at the same rate, having the same clock cycle, and they are in sync with each other, this particular rotation is called as the synchronous rotation. So what is synchronous rotation basically? So you have the earth rotating, you have the moon also rotating. Because the clock rates and the rate which they rotate is almost same, it is called as the synchronous rotation. Let's try and understand the other key differences that is in relevance to the near as well as the far side. So the first key difference that we have to understand is, as we have already discussed, the one which we are able to see is the near side, the one which we are not able to see is the far side. The next key difference is the near side which faces the earth, that which we are able to see, has certain dark patterns. So these are the dark patterns which we are able to see, and that is the unique feature of the near side. And at the same time, when we look into the far side, what we also visualize is the circular spots. So on the near side, what we have is the dark patterns. So on the far side, what you will see is the circular spots. So during the formation of the moon, there was meteor bombardment that happened. So as the meteor bombarded this particular region, this particular shell region that was present on the near side underwent a metamorphical process. So what are we discussing here is that as the meteorites hit this particular region, there was a sudden gush of lava that was emanating from this particular region, and as this lava came out, it spurted out, there was evening out that was taking place. So this particular region of the near side has a thinner shell, but when we look into the far side, they have a thicker shell. So because they have a thicker shell, this particular region is pristine in form, but the near side underwent a lot of changes. So because of this particular change, what you will see on the near side is they have a thinner shell. On the other side, when you look into the far side, what you will have is a thicker shell. And the third important point that we have to understand is in terms of the noise quality. So the near side of the earth is closer to the earth, so it has a lot of noise and disturbance. So because of its disturbance, because of the increase in the noise, the communication devices or the satellites have made it too noisy for the astronomers to listen to and interpret the signals. But the other side, that is the far side of the moon, is a quiet place. It is not noisy as much as the near side. So as a result, there are also aspirations, there are also thoughts and ideas where astronomers are planning to have a radio telescope that could reveal how the astronomical mysteries can be unraveled. So the near side of the moon is comparatively noisier, while the far side of the moon is comparatively quieter. So what are the other details that we have to understand with respect to this particular mission? So this particular mission, which has a lander and a rover, touched down at a targeted area near the moon's south pole in the von Karman crater. So kindly remember, the von Karman crater is something in relevance to the moon's mission of the Chang'e, and this particular von Karman crater is present in another crater which is also called as the Icon Basin. So this Icon Basin is a larger depression, but this particular von Karman crater is present within this particular depression of the Icon Basin. So this is what we need to understand. Another key important point this article makes about is about the soft landing. So what is this soft landing basically? So you have the space vehicle. So as this space vehicle enters into this particular region, if it is able to land without any damage to its equipment, without any damage to its vehicle, then that particular landing is called as the soft landing. But what happens in hard landing? So you have another process called as hard landing. When it immediately bounds on this particular region, there might be certain internal turbulence or disturbances to its equipment, but when it is a soft landing, you have a precision, you have a perfect landing, and this will not have any impact or damage or destruction to the space vehicle. And China has accomplished this particular feat, and the other two countries which have already accomplished this particular feat is, one is United States of America and the other is the Russia. So what is the significance of this particular project? So this particular project is exploring the far side of the moon. This particular region is pristine in its form. We did discuss when we discussed about the thinner shell as well as the thicker shell. So what this will lead us to is exploring and understanding how the origination of the solar system happened. So it will reveal the secrets about the solar system's early day, and this will indirectly help the astronomers to see the universe more clearly, help them understand about different exoplanets, and also help us to reveal how exactly the origination of the earth happened, how the origination of the moon happened, is there any mineral entity that is present within this particular region, and how we would be able to extract maximum with respect to this particular exploration will all be looked into, and that becomes the most significant aspect with respect to this particular project. So moving on, let's look into the next article. In this article, what we are discussing is about the Casanur forest disease. This is also known as the monkey fever. So what is this? It is a viral fever which is caused by a virus belonging to family Flaviviridae, that is a tick-borne hemorrhage fever. So what this will happen is you have a tick-borne disease, and this afflicts both the humans as well as other animals, which are caused by the infectious agents that are transmitted by the tick bites. And the most important point that this article goes on to say is this was identified in the year 1951 when an illness occurred in monkeys in Casanur forest area of Shimoga district in the Karnataka. So kindly remember, the Casanur forest area is in the region of Karnataka. So because it first appeared in the monkeys, that is why people also call it by the name of monkey fever. So the next point in picture is how is that the transmission takes place. So the virus spreads through a parasitic tick called as the Haemophilus spinigera. So what this means is this is a kind of a forest tick which is a major element in the transmission of this particular virus. So apart from the monkeys, there are also variety of other animals, including the porcupines, the rats, the squirrels, the mice, as well as shrews. So it is not only the monkeys, these other animals can also be a source of transmission as well. So the human infection can also happen through the handling of these dead animals. So in case a person goes on to touch these types of animals without taking any precaution or wearing a gloves, then that particular person on handling a dead monkey or any other animal can also be infected. So apart from this, there is also another ecobiological change. So you see there is large scale deforestation that is happening in this particular region. So as deforestation happen, those type of ticks which were supposed to be in forest area comes off to the land area, that which is occupied by the humans, and when the ticks go on to infect a particular person due to deforestation, this can also lead to the spread of the Casanur forest disease. So what are the symptoms for this particular disease? So what you will see is they'll have high fever with frontal headaches, and they'll have hemorrhages resulting in the bleeding from the nasal cavity, throat, gums, as well as the gastrointestinal bleeding. The other symptoms that can also be seen is vomiting or stiffness, absence of the reflexes, as well as the mental disturbances. So what are we supposed to know? We are supposed to know that this is a viral fever, and we also need to know the transmission as well as the symptoms of it. This is what we need to know in reference to this particular article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says many Swachh Bharat toilets defunct unusable, MP's panel says. So what is this article all about? So when you look into the context, there was one of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Rural Development which went on to say that all those toilets that were constructed under the Swachh Bharat mission have already become dysfunctional and they are also unusable, and it went on to slam the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation for not bothering to find out the scope of this particular problem in spite of the recommendation to this particular survey. So what this article goes on to speak about is it basically provides two important details. So what are the details that it speaks about? One is about the quality of the construction, the other is about the scarcity of water. So what does this MP panel go on to speak about the quality of construction? So what this article goes on to say is these days when there is a toilet construction, it is rarely done by the householder. So if I am the person who is given a particular subsidy or the money, then I would be personally visualizing this particular construction. I would know what are the types of materials that are used, what is the quality of materials that are used. But of late what you will see is when there is construction that is happening, this is given to the contractor. It is this contractor who will not test the quality. All that he wants is the work to be completed, and what happens during this? He pays the laborers, he pays the masons, and he takes away all the subsidies. This is leading to the corruption indirectly. And what is the problem here? The quality of construction is affected. So if I am the person who is directly involving myself, then the quality of construction might be good. But if it is the person that is the contractor who is engaging in it, he does not pay heed to the quality, and all he does is he puts a poor quality of equipment, he uses poor quality of materials, and the construction and the quality of construction has been completely abysmal. So what this particular committee goes on to say is such toilets will not remain effective after few years. So what we need to do is we need to give greater emphasis towards the house owner undertaking management rather than taking up with the contractors. So if it is the house owner who is taking up, he would be sure of the quality of the material, and if it is the contractor, he'll do a shoddy job which will actually deviate from the standard established principles. So the first key point it says is the quality of construction is comparatively abysmal. And the second key point he goes on to speak about is the scarcity of water. So all households need water connections, but these households which already have employed the toilets do not have the water connectivity, and because they do not have the water connectivity, toilets constructed under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan could not be used. So these are the two important points this particular article goes on to speak about. So as a result, what it has recommended is it is not about building more and more toilets. So building of toilets should not be the goal, but instead ending defecation, open defecation should be the priority, is what the parliamentary panel has gone on to suggest. Why we have restricted this is because we already have another video called as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan on the BYJU'S videos. So kindly type Swachh Bharat Abhiyan BYJU'S, you will be able to get the video, and then the complete picture of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and the programs prior to that are all explained on this video. That is why we have restricted this with respect to this particular article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says go for Kadaknath chicken, scientist advises Team India. So what is important for us to understand is about the Kadaknath chicken, which is also called as the Kalimasi in a local breed of chicken. So what is this Kadaknath chicken? So these are nothing but a breed of chicken. Where do you find them? In the region of Madhya Pradesh. So kindly remember, this is raised in the Jabuas Adivasi community, and this was also given a geographical indication. So kindly remember the important point from the prelims perspective, that this is found in the region of Madhya Pradesh. So this type of chicken is completely high in proteins, and they have very low fat as well as low cholesterol level, and this is the only animal that has got a GI tag, and that is why the Kadaknath chicken is far more expensive. So because it has less fat content, less cholesterol, more of protein, protein. That is why the expense of this particular Kadaknat chicken is comparatively more and is priced more than the other chickens. So why are we discussing this? It is because the government of India has also given a geographical indication, and this can be a prospective question in your prelims examination. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says hope with concerns in 2019. So what is this article all about? So we have seen how the economy has run in the 2018. So we also saw that there was growth in the world over, and we also saw how the United States of America also amplified with its growth factor. But what we also saw on the international circles is that there was a large scale trade war which could have been avoided. Had trade war been avoided, what we would have further seen is the improvement in the growth factor. And what we also see is the Britain exit also hindered its particular growth. So these are with respect to the international pockets on the international front. And when it comes to the Indian front, the first quarter of the growth rate was very good, and we had a very good economic growth rate. But this particular growth rate, can it be sustained? Can it be moved to the next quarter? That is the questionable factor. Why is that questionable is the next question that pops up, and that is due to the factor that the crude oil, or for example the agriculture, or for example the investment is not going in good ratio. That is why this article goes on to explain that there are certain concerns. These concerns with respect to the investment ratio, the banking system, the employment, as well as the agrarian distress that we have seen in our economy needs to be addressed, so that this growth that we have seen in the first quarter is also employed and is moved on to the next quarters as well. Let's try to understand what are the various concerns that this particular article goes on to speak about. So the first point it speaks about is with respect to the investment ratio. So let's try and understand what this investment ratio is all about. So the first key point that we have to understand here is what is the capital output ratio. So what is this capital output ratio? As the definition says, it is capital output and its ratio. Let's say for example I'll have to produce one of the pens. So this pen is costing around 10 unit for about 10 rupees for about 1 unit. So if I'll have to manufacture one pen, then I'll require 10 rupees. Let's say there is another person X and is able to manufacture the same pen for about 5 rupees. So I'm producing this pen for about 10 rupees for 1 unit. He is able to produce it at a much better level. So the capital that he is investing is far less. So the capital output ratio means what is the amount of capital that is needed to produce 1 unit of this particular output. So the lesser the capital, the lesser the number of this capital output ratio, it means the efficiency is comparatively more. Another key important point that this article speaks about is in reference to the incremental capital output ratio. So apart from the defined one, in case I'll have to produce an additional product, additional unit, what is the cost of capital that I'll have to infuse? So what it says is the additional unit of capital or investment that is required for me to produce an additional unit of output is called as the incremental capital output ratio. So what we have already learnt is lower the capital output ratio, much efficient the system is. Likewise, lower the incremental capital output ratio, the better it is. This basically reflects the efficiency in the capital management and efficiency in producing a particular output. So what we have to understand here is this particular incremental capital output ratio is not only restricted as to simple parameter, it has multiple parameters in it. Let's say for example the quality of labor, or let's say for example the skill development, or the educational sector, or the skill development in the educational sector. So it is not restricted to a simple parameter, it has a connection to a number of parameters. So in case you will have to produce the lesser and the most efficient incremental capital output ratio, there is a link to all this which involves the quality of the labor, the education, as well as the skill development. So the lesser you will have to get it, the more efficient these systems have to work. So what this article goes on to say is, in case we are able to keep up the incremental capital output ratio at about 4%, then what we will see is more amount amount of output, and for which what we require is the investment. So in case we are able to invest more and manage it efficiently by organizing it and managing all these parameters that are associated with the output, then we would be able to manage the growth rate. So this is what we need to understand when it comes to the investment ratio. The next key important point is about the banking system. So we have discussed n number of times in our YouTube videos, in the economy this week, as well as in our CNA lectures, that India is currently facing non-performing assets, which also include the stressed assets. So what is the problem is that when you see the banking system, the major asset of a particular bank is its loan terms. So only when it is able to give loans to the individuals, to the organizations, it will be getting some interest, and this is the asset for a banking system. But what we see is the non-performing assets which is added on its papers, and that is why they are not able to lend. And because they are not able to lend, the individuals as well as the banking who are not able to get this investment from the banking are not able to make the investments. It is the banking which should provide the loan, which is an asset to the bank. At the same time, the people should also take the loan. They should take this loan to invest, but this is also not happening. So at one point the investment is not happening. The asset which is the loan for the bank, that is also not happening. Why? Because of the non-performing assets. At the same time, there are also issues with the non-banking financial sector. So these non-banking financial sectors take the loans from the bank. So because now banks are also not able to give the loans because of the non-performing assets, this is indirectly a chain link. So because of this, the investments are not happening, the individuals are not able to invest. As a result, the banking system needs to be rejuvenated. So what we need is the recapitalization that the government needs to do, and this has to be done at a very and a immediate level. So all the problems that the banks are currently facing is due to not having the capital. So the government needs to look into and provide the recapitalization of the public sector. The third key important point it speaks about is with respect to the employment growth. So what is that with respect to the employment growth? This can be diversified into three segments. So what are the three segments? One, we are looking at the growth factor in terms of the investment, and the next key important point is we are looking at from the sectoral breakage, which involves the IT as well as the financial sector, and the third is we are looking at the external trade. So when we consider the growth can happen on two dimensions. So what are the two dimensions? One, I'm making an investment, that which is new, that which is not existing, and on the other side there is already an existing growth factor. I'm extracting, utilizing from the same existing model. So what are the two models of growth that I'm speaking about? One, I'm making a new investment, and the other, what I'm doing is already there is an existence, I'm extracting maximum from it. So why are we discussing this? It is in respect to the employment. So what happens is, let's take a simple example. Let's take the example of Flipkart and the Walmart. So the management of Flipkart was taken over by Walmart. The share of Walmart is comparatively increased. So is there any new capital that is added? Not actually. So when there is no new capital that is added, this is already existing. So there will be certain subtle changes. When there is these subtle changes that is made, there will not be much of employment generation. Why? Because there is already an existence of this particular industry. So when there is already an existence, when you are extracting employment from this, this will add less number of employment. Let's take for example, there is already Flipkart, there is already Amazon. Let's say Jabong is coming into picture. Jabong is currently not there. It is coming and adding value to the system. So it is investing a lot of money as a new entity. So when you have Jabong coming into the picture, it is investing money. So this will indirectly develop new set of jobs. So when you already have an existing industry, this will not generate much of employment. So when you have new set of industry or new investment, this will lead to a lot of employment is what is being said. And at the same time, there are two important sectors. So when we look into the sectors, one key important sector is the IT sector, the other one is the financial sector. The IT sector was in a boom, and the educational skilled people were all employed by the IT sector. But this boom that we have currently seen has seen a drop. Why? Because the IT is undergoing a metamorphosis. It is undergoing a structural change. What is this structural change? There is implementation of the artificial intelligence. And then you also have the automation. As we have seen in the past, the employment of the automation as well as the artificial intelligence has made that the number of people who are employed are comparatively reduced, and it will decrease further during a course of time. So what we see is IT sector, which was once in a booming sector, is now not a booming sector. And at the same time, the financial sector, which was also working fine, currently with the non-performing assets and other set of issues that are associated with the banking system, is also seeing a problem. So on one side there is an increase with respect to the growth rate, but what we are failing to see is that the employment, which should have had an increase with respect to the growth, is not happening because there is less of new investments, and the sector which was once booming is not booming currently. And the third important point with respect to the external sector, so what we have seen is that India is an integrated, so whenever there is a changes that happens in any part of the world, we will also see a similar changes that is taking place in India. So because we are integrated, any changes, whether it is positive or the negative, will have its implications with respect to India. So what we have to make sure is, because India has much of imports from other countries when it comes to crude oil, what we also saw was that rupee was depreciating and the current account deficit was increasing. We had other trends with respect to the inflation, we had the agricultural distress, the logistics sector saw its increase in the price. So all this is interconnected. So what we have to make sure is, when there is intensification of all this, whether it is due to trade war or due to the implications felt by the internal sector, we'll have to strengthen our structure. And what do we have to do? What we have to do is export more of promotion, and we will have to make sure we are containing the imports. So this is another factor that we have to look into. And the last sector that it speaks about is in relevance to the agrarian distress. So the agrarian distress that it speaks about is the fall in the prices, the suicides that are taking place, the farmers are not getting the required yield, and there have been large scale suicides that are being committed. So what this particular article goes on to say is, the government needs to step up its process. So what the government is currently doing is, whenever there is a fall in prices, you see the government coming up into the market, it is taking up these set of crops, but as soon as you take these crops, you're putting it in the godowns, you're putting it in the storage markets, but are you taking care of the storage? Not actually. It is becoming a feed for the rats as well as the other pests. So what the government should do is, instead of you taking it, make sure you're strengthening the storage process, you're strengthening the godown, you are already implementing a lot of schemes, you are intervening in the market. It is not about the financial capacity alone, it is what you do with the procurement. So after you have procured, where are the goods being delivered? How is that it is being siphoned? This is not being taken care by the government. This also needs to be introspected, is what this particular article gone on to say. So on a conclusion bit, what this article says is, there are about 5 concerns. One, with the raising investment, putting the banking system back on the rails, employment generation, enhancing export, and removing agrarian distress. So if we are able to manage all of this, whatever we saw the growth factor on the first quarter can also be moved on to the next quarter, is what this article goes on to speak about. So let's look into the next article. So there are 2 important articles with respect to the editorial. One is to do with the triple talaq bill. This is already explained in detail on the 31st December, so kindly look into it. Again, the Sabrimala issue we have discussed lots and many times, so this article will be not taken up for the discussion. So the next article would be in reference to, is Modi charisma phasing. This is completely a political issue, this is not of any administrative importance for us, and that is why this article is also omitted. So let's look into the next article. So the next article says, judges retirement age won't go up. So what is this article all about? So when you look into the context, the law ministry has gone on to say that this particular proposal by the parliamentary panel to increase the age group for the Supreme Court judges from 65 to 67 and the High Court judges from 62 to 65 will not be taking into picture. So what this particular panel gone on to said was that there have been a large scale vacancies. So because of the increase in the vacancies, what we are having is piling and piling of cases. So one such alternative where we would be able to reduce the backlog is by increasing the retirement age of the Supreme Court judges as well as the High Court judges. With reference to this particular recommendation, what the Law Commission has gone on to say is that it is not planning to look into such recommendation anytime closer by. Another key important point that we have to understand is it for the first time that such recommendation was made? Not actually. Previously, when you look into August 2010, the Union Law Minister M. Veerappa Moily had also introduced the Constitution 114 Amendment Bill that was in year 2010, but this particular bill also lapsed because this particular discussion not happened. So what the Parliament has gone on to say is, that is the government has gone on to say is, that it is not ready to take up this particular argument right now. Another key important discussion is something to do with the reservation. So this particular article once again has the relevance with respect to the panel recommendation. So the Law Ministry has currently said that there would be no such proposals to introduce reservation for the women to the higher judiciary. So what did the committee basically go on to say? So what the committee went on to say is that we need to include more women judges in both the higher as well as the subordinate judiciary, and that was in line with proposing a 50% of the total strength of judges that needs to be accommodated with the women. However, what the Law Minister has gone on to say is that we know for the fact that when you look into the Constitution, Article 124 as well as Article 217 of the Indian Constitution, which picturizes the appointment, has nowhere given any relevance. It does not provide for any reservation for any caste, class or gender. So when the Constitution in itself under Article 124 as well as 217 has not given any such criteria, why should we introduce such a thing is what the Law Ministry has said. And instead what the Law Ministry has said is, whenever there is a proposal that comes up from the Chief Justice of India or from the Chief Justice of a particular state, we the Law Ministry have almost been requesting these Chief Justices and the puny judges, the senior most judges of that particular Supreme Court and the High Court, to consider certain people from the SC/ST community or from the OBCs or even from the women sector. So we cannot introduce this particular scheme simply because the Constitution is not saying so, that we can have a reservation with respect to the caste, class or gender. And what we have indirectly done is we are approaching these judges, asking them to consider these people so that there is adequate representation of women, SC/ST as well as other backward classes as minorities. Another key important point that this article fails to understand is, when we consider the gender as the thing, there is also empowerment factor. So when the woman who is there as empowered, she is almost got the same level of education as much as a man is. So when both have got the same level, it should be based on the merit principle. So why get in a principle of reservation? So when both have attained same amount of education from the same university, and they are supposed to fight it on the basis of merit, not on the basis of reservation. And at the same time, what we can also look at the other side is, we live in a patriarchal society. So this patriarchal society has certain biases. So when we say that there are men and women who are getting educated from the same university and they're coming as the output, and when they have the similar intellectual calibrate, what we have to understand is, because of the patriarchal bias, the women would be not able to climb the ladders of the judiciary. Why? Because there is bias. So on one side we need to look at the merit perspective, where reservation should not be given. On the other side, when you look at the social perspective, the education will not picture in. What pictures in is the bias in the form of patriarchy. When this comes into picture, the reservation as a whole gets prominence, and we feel that women needs to be provided the reservation when it comes to the higher as well as the lower judiciary. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So the first question says, consider the following statements about the Anak Krakatoa. So what is it? It is a volcanic island. It is situated on the eastern side of Sumatra. Which of the above statements are correct? It is one only. Why? Because it is a volcanic island, but it is not situated on the eastern side. It is on the center around the Sunda Strait. It is at the center of this particular region, and this also is a part of Lampung. So let's look into the next question. It says, Nati folk dance is performed performed in the state of, this is in the state of Himachal Pradesh, and this is taken up from today's newspaper. It says women dressed in traditional attire perform Kulu Nati, a traditional dance on the second day of winter carnival in Manali. So let's look into the previous year question paper. Which of the following has been accorded geographical indication status? Banaras brocade saris, Rajasthani dal batti churma, Tirupati ladu, and the answer for this is 1 and 3 only. So let's look into the mains practice question. It says discuss in detail the concern areas that India has to work on for improvement in growth prospects in the coming years. So we have already discussed this particular question, so kindly write all your answers on the comment section so there can be peer review as well as evaluation from the BYJU'S team as well. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.